welcome everyone. I'm Wesley Enoch. I'm your host here today at CIAF, the Cairns Indigenous Art Fair. And today we're talking about tourism and a little bit more about us as an expert panel and what we're about to do. I'd just like to introduce you to our panelists. We have Cameron Costello, all the way from Noonuccal country, Stradbroke Island, Moreton Bay area. Good to see you, Cameron. Welcome.
Yura.
We've got Willie Enoch Tranby, yes, a relation, yes, a cousin of mine, and he's been doing a lot of work up there in Cairns and surrounds, especially Rainforest Station. Good on you, Willie. Good to see you.
How you going, Wesley?
I'd like to say that he was looking like the Black Ned Kelly there for a while, so it's good to kind of make it.
Here we go.
Yeah, there we go. A little bit of family going on there. Rosie Ware, the lovely Artie Rosie, all the way from Torres Straits, Thursday Island. Beautiful artist and tourist operator. Good to see you, Rosie. Good to have you here.
Hello.
And Gudjugudju again in Cairns. Wonderful kind of hub of work there. Good to see you, Uncle.
No worries. Yeah. How are you?
Very well. And of course, we're meeting from all over the country at the moment. We know that the Cairns Indigenous Art Fair is there on traditional lands, and I know Gudjugudju has strong connections, and we'll maybe have a little acknowledgement of country through him in a second. But just this notion too of wherever you are, to pay respects to your local Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander peoples, and the traditional owners of the land on which we are sitting, the elders and the wisdom that have brought us all together, and of course the young people who will always lead us into the future. How we work together as First Nations people is very important. My name's Wesley Enoch. I'm Quandamooka man as well as Kanju and lots of other family connections, especially up that way, and I'll be your host today. Now, tourism is one of those very interesting issues, about how do we develop our community? How do we go from not just offering employment, but also strengthening our arts and culture? Cameron, I'm going to start with you. This notion of what does it mean to have tourism in your nation, and especially as a First Nations person, is it important, or is it sometimes a little bit of a corruption, if you like, of our cultural connection to country?
Yeah, thanks. And just want to acknowledge all the brothers and sisters there, and Artie Rosie there, and the Cairns Indigenous Art Fair, and the fantastic 11th year, I think now, and it's a celebration, and just pay my respects to Gudjugudju and his family up there as well. Thank you very much for keeping this going. But in terms of tourism as a colonial concept, and that we, for us mobs, when we go to someone else's country, you've got to check in, and so having a concept where people can just come out, tourism has generally been about coming and doing whatever you want. So there is its challenges, particularly for us, the Noonuccal people, which has been an island where we've only got our native title rights, land rights back in 2011. And so for us, that it is a massive opportunity for us. And it's also a challenge. The opportunity for us is that we get to care for country. We get to actually engage with our own spirituality and able to share and impart that knowledge across to the broader community and in fact globally. So for us, it's a journey and a connection, but also the opportunity for us to send people away as ambassadors for our culture as well. So for me, that's where I sit with tourism, and I'm blessed and honoured to be on the Queensland Tourism Industry Council as the deputy chair. So for me, it's a part of my role is to advocate for our mob about tourism and our role that we can play, and the opportunity for jobs, for education and caring for country that it can provide for all of our mobs.
Now, Gudjugudju, I might come to you. I know we're having a little bit of sound issue, but hopefully it'll work itself out. This idea of welcoming people onto country to come on and to understand your cultural perspective. You've been involved in a project there in Cairns. You want to talk a little bit about that project and why you started it up?
Yeah, look, just in regards to welcomes here as well, and I know there's quite a few of us who did the welcome, but and welcoming to country, I think it's a big thing for all groups, no matter where you are and from which country you are, to welcome people to country, and normally, I'd say Bulangaran, to say, welcome, Java Janagaran while you're here, stand in our country as well. So, but I'd like to acknowledge all of the all of the different tribal groups from all over Australia, and the local ones that are here, whether you're Yirinji, Javagai, Kukuyalanji, all the different groups from up the top, Kuku as well. There's too many, and like with yourselves down there with Kondamuka and that, everybody around Australia and all the different tribes from all around Australia, all the different nations, tribal nations, just like to welcome you here and respects to, the elders both past and present. And I think welcoming people to country, no matter where they are, whether they jump off the plane, I think should be something that should be looked at, whether they jump off the plane or come on boat into Cairns or any port in Australia, whether it's the airport, or the shipping ports. And I think it's a big thing. And now I think a lot of people are becoming more aware of it and sensitive to it. But CIAF been a great event. And, 11 years this year, I know COVID's kind of come in now, and, it was the year of Indigenous people, but now it's, the year of COVID people. So, but, respect, I think all the communities, even though everybody went into lockdown, respect to all the communities that went into lockdown as well. And, my home community, which is Yarrabah, which I was born in, and I think people just went back. I wish I was on the community isolating, because then I went into hunting, fishing, everything, And meanwhile, us mob here had to go use.
All the freezers are full of fish, is what I'm hearing as well. But how do you welcome in a tourist into this environment too, Gudjugudju? This idea that there are different ways to get tourists involved in our arts and cultural scene. How have you seen that working for you?
Yeah, look, and I think that's a big thing, and I think a lot of different industries that come to Cairns, no matter what industry they are, when they do come to Cairns, whether it's a tourism conference, or whether it's a electrical conference, or whether it's a travel conference, I think I think it's a way of the meet and greet that you do. Traditionally, you'd actually meet somebody on country and welcome them, but also tell them a bit about your country and your people. And I think that part of it gives people a little bit more understanding about welcome to country. I normally say to people, there's two histories. One's a more modern history that's just been here for 250. The other's like 60,000 years. And I say, our people, 60,000 years, that's like 2,500 generations for people being on country. And I think they kind of can't fathom that. But I think, like welcoming people here and talking about how we want to look after the environment as well. So when we talk about tourism, we're looking at ecotourism as well. When we welcome people here and say, look, we want to protect the reef as well as the rainforest. And I know a lot of people aren't aware of the many, ranges that are actually on country. But, that could be another tourism aspect, taking people on country to, whether it's looking for crazy yellow ants or scientific research on country, and helping mob as well.
This might be a good point to go to Artie Rosie and say, ask Artie Rosie a little bit about your practice, because you have a wonderful practice of welcoming people, not just to Thursday Island, but also into your home and to meet your chooks. I mean, you go the whole hog
there. Respect first to my Tuareg nation of this place here I talk from, and to all the TOs throughout Australia. I pay my respects. Yeah, with tourism here, I've embraced tourism for many years, and I've diversified my art into the tourism, and I've opened up my home because I found I live here on TI. It's only a small island, and the people find me, so I can't hide from them. So I've opened up my home to them, And that, I say, is like I'm the package of my art. When they see my art, they see Auntie Rosie. When they see my home, they see Auntie Rosie.
And you pick them up from the airport or from however they land. Is that true?
Well, we've got various ways of the visitors coming to our island. Our peak tourist season is May to October, and that's every year that it's increased more and more. And the ones that come up the Cape from Cairns, 4-wheel drive, they come to Bamaga, Sacia, then they get the ferry over here to TI and spend half a day. Or if they're with the big tours like AP Tours or Outback Spirit or some of the other 4-wheel drive tours that come from Cairns, they stay overnight and then they fly out the next day with Qantas Link back to Cairns and then go their various ways.
I'm going to come back to you, Auntie Rosie, and talk a little bit more about collaboration, because it feels like you don't just work by yourself, you work with a whole range of people in that same area, very similar to how Gudjugudju set up that little hub there, that the community is also very important to you. Is that true to say?
Very important. The community is my life sort of thing. They are here. We live together. We work together. We see one another day in, day out. They know my art. They know me. Gudjugudju Cultural Centre, where I'm speaking from here this afternoon, they're a very big help to all the artists throughout the Torres Strait. They have our database and they promote us to the museums, to the art galleries, to whatever happening, to all the arts fair throughout Australia, to the world. They know what different artists' work is doing, different ones are doing. And the community, we help one another here because we're on a little island. We all been from way back is always helping one another. We like network to one another.
And Gudjugudju, coming back to you, I mean, you have a networking capacity as well. Tell me a little bit about the hub that you've set up.
Yeah, with the hub that we've set up, the Cairns Indigenous Tourism Hub, where we actually promote tourism where people see authentic Indigenous tourism, because we try to focus more on that, because and I'd love to put Artie Rosie on there as well, on our website to actually promote their business, especially here in Cairns. But our website is Aborigine. So in regards to people booking online for tours or even coming into the hub, if they come into the hub, they can book a tour, we can talk and tell them about it. Or, and we've got the Three Sisters there as well, so do arts and craft, and they'll be looking at doing more workshops in their venue. So we look at promoting everybody's art and culture through that, but we also, in the hub, we have the Gudjugudju, which is the bush food cafe, so people can come in and get a taste of bush foods as well, and sit down, have a yarn, and it's a real relaxing atmosphere. So people can look at just sitting and talking about whether it's Cairns or planning their tour. So if they're going to go up the Cape, how would they go? What's the best travel plan for them? So we're actually in the stages of updating our website, so it'll probably look a little bit different to what it is now. But people can even plan their own North Queensland. Also, we have Northern Territory, Western Australia. So the thing is a lot of Indigenous tourism, companies that are owned by mob in and around Australia. People can book online and even have a talk to them before they actually go and book the tour.
That's very important. I think, Willie, I'll come to you on this one, because you're rainforestation as well as a whole range of work looking at in Kuranda, and there's a huge kind of First Nations tourism community in Kuranda when you think about rainforestation, you think of Jabberkai, you think of a whole range of activities there. Tell us a little bit about what you think are the most important issues around Indigenous tourism at the moment.
Well, I think the most important thing about, Indigenous tourism, at the moment, I guess, across Australia, with the COVID-19, what's been happening there, up here, there's, unfortunately, there's been some, Indigenous businesses that have been placed into hibernation, quite sadly, but there's an opportunity to basically, to restart the button and be innovative and, create a new experience or product that, that still has an Indigenous authenticity attached to it, and basically look at different ways how to, I guess, keep surviving during this time.
Well, the Palmaguri, the experience there that we read about, you talk about authenticity, you talk about also ideas of trust. Why do you think that authenticity and trust is important for a tourism audience?
I think it's important. I think for us as Indigenous people, we have obligations to our culture itself and following the process of our culture, and that's in terms of how much, we share, how we share it in terms of the product or the experience itself. So it's vitally important that, us Indigenous people, that we have to abide by obligations to our culture, but also looking at a way how to be innovative and, I guess, produce authentic, sustainable experience.
Cameron, I might come to you then. I mean, you're part of the body that's also looking at it, putting it all together. And you pointed me to this wonderful document. Let me get to share it there. The Queensland First Nations Tourism Plan. What is it about this plan? What's it really trying to achieve? And what are the big things that we need to look forward to going forward?
Yeah, look, I just want to first acknowledge the work of the Queensland Tourism Industry Council, which is the peak council for all of Queensland. So it's the peak body for tourism in Queensland. And QTIC has been involved with helping to progress Indigenous tourism for over 10 years. So they've had Indigenous Champions Network, which Willie has been a part of. And part of that has been this journey where I've been involved in the last few years of actually the board wanting to help progress Indigenous tourism. There's a couple of things around Indigenous tourism. Firstly is that, like the arts sector, it's a major catalyst for social change. So not only does it provide economic and cultural and environmental outcomes for us, but it actually provides social catalyst for change as well. And I think development of this plan, which was consultation around the state, so a number of, I think Auntie Rhonda Apai was very integral in driving this and has been part of QTIC for a while, has had an Indigenous Champions Network and a working group that has developed this First Nations tourism plan. And probably the key aspect of it is it provides 6 areas of recommendations for moving forward. And one of those, Willie just talked about, it's authentic. So yeah, if we go to that page 8, it's really important that the first and foremost is recognition and respect for First Nations culture, stories and connection to country. The second is about engagement and partnerships, so encouraging the creation of mutually beneficial and strategic partnerships to grow First Nations tourism sector. So how do we work with government and industry to drive forward our agenda? The next one, which is a major discussion point over the next 12 months, as you would know, this year was the Year of Indigenous Tourism. The Premier of Queensland announced it. Because of COVID, she has announced that she will extend that into next year. And so the third pillar is around creating an entity that gives a voice to First Nations tourism. So looking at a peak Queensland Indigenous tourism body is going to be critical for us over the next year or so to go out and discuss with traditional owners and industry about what is our peak voice. In other countries, they've got Maori tourism and Canadian tourism, but we need to now do that ourselves. And I say this, now is our time for us, for First Nations people. The tourism sector is listening, and there's somewhat of a cultural awakening globally about the importance of First Nation tourism to being authentic tourism. So for us, it's really important that the next year, in the Year of Indigenous Tourism, we collectively drive this forward. The other one was authentic product development, which is what Willie talked about. So it's very clear from discussing with First Nations people that authentic product is critical. And that looks at a whole range of different things around IP and intellectual property rights and fake art, etc. Then, of course, there's marketing and awareness, and then training, skills development and jobs. So those are the key areas for us to really be driving forward. We've got an Indigenous working group set up with QTIC, which has got experts in the area of law like Tony McAvoy. So that whole intellectual property sort of discussion. We've got Willie's on there, and we've got people from around we've got Yarrabah, so Dale Munderby from Yarrabah. We've got Suzanne Thompson from the Outback. So we've got a whole range of diverse skills. And the key thing for us is that we're no longer just tour guides. First Nations people have a major lead role in this area. We run and own the natural assets, the tourism assets like national parks. We run them. We run accommodation now. So we run campgrounds. We develop products like whale watching and specialised tours, food tours. So we're no longer just a guide. We are in this space and we are taking the lead. And like they're talking about with like traditional knowledge in fire management, this is our time to actually say, now that they're hitting the reset button on tourism, First Nations people who have been the longest storytellers have been hosting First people. We've been hosting tourists on Minjerribah since Matthew Flinders come to get some water. So we've been in the service industry for a long time, and First Nations people need to be telling that story. We're the oldest storytellers on the planet. And you'll see the tourism ads now in other countries of welcoming people back, all involve their First Nations people. And I think it's a really important story for us.
Well, Cameron, I mean, you were involved in a lot of the CIAF work very early on. What role do you think arts, art making, but also cultural activity, why is that so important in this tourism environment as well?
Well, I think so arts and culture, in essence, are our tourism product in a way. So they're the basis upon which we tell our stories, which and it's what people want to engage with. They want to hear us telling our stories. They want to come to our lands and sit down and understand. And the arts is that great way of expressing our stories and our culture that people understand, and they want a product and experience. And quite often it's the art experience, whether it's visual arts, whether it's dance, whether it's authentic, just understanding of what the meaning of and how to manage country. These are all things that tourists are wanting to engage with. It's a growing global phenomenon now, the Indigenous tourism space. And so the arts has a major role in that, again, because it's a safe place. Like festivals are such a safe space for non-Indigenous people to come. And quite often they're only given negative imagery of First Nations people. And so arts centres and cultural spaces and performances are a really safe play for the global visitor to come and experience tourism.
Artie Rosie, I'm going to come to you. I mean, just hearing that about arts and culture being very important, I mean, you live it every day. Your art is all about your community. What are the kind of experiences tourists are getting when they come to the island and come to you to have this arts and cultural experience? What do they talk about?
Well, I support everything that Cameron says. He hits a nail on the head, because art and tourism is hand in hand. As an artist, I had to diversify my art, not only just to keep my wall hangings, my textile in gallery exhibitions. I had to break loose from the gallery as well, and working outside of that and putting my art onto little things for the tourists, little merchandise stuff. So my art went on textiles, onto furnishing, cushion covers, tablecloths, magnets even. So there was prices from small to whatever, to the big price. And everything what Cameron says, I totally support, because that's what our visitors want. We are custodians of our place, our land, our sea, our air, and around us. They look to us for safety, to take care of them, because they spend a lot of dollars before they come here to the Torres Strait. By the time they hit Cairns and come up the Cape, by the time they come to Thursday Island, they have spent a lot of money. And so we provide that. It's just our ways of looking after them, making sure that they're all right, making sure that they have something authentic that they take away and they love it. That to me, that ecotourism, one-on-one with the people of the place, they just love it. And they go back and they they spread the word to their network. Because the next tourist season, I see when some of them talk to me, they say, "Oh, my sister was up here, last year." And that, that's that network. They bought something from me. They come back again. They buy something. So they spend the dollars here before they leave the island.
Willie, you talked earlier a little bit about innovation as well. What are the kind of innovations that are occurring? Artie Rosie talking about making sure there are lots of different price points for the tourist, low price points all the way up to higher price points. What are the things you're doing in terms of your business?
Well, I think basically for our region, one of our major markets was the Chinese markets, and obviously all the international flights have closed, and there could be right up until 2023 or 24 for the airlines to get back up in the air in terms of international travel. So we had to look, I guess, at our experiences and and be innovative and looking at the domestic market and the local market. Because one of the important markets for us is the local market, because, when stuff happens like COVID-19, who do you look for? And again, with us, with the Cairns region, we don't have the population to survive on our population, let alone. So we had to look at the drive market as well, domestic travellers as well. And most of those domestic travellers, their families travelling up here. And, like Artie Rosie, touched on before with the pricing, we had to, price sensitive. So, there's people are coming up from, Brisbane and the Gold Coast, and the other day I popped in and went to fuel my car up, and I was talking to a guy behind the, he was serving me, and I was talking about, domestic market, and he's actually seen a spike in fuel consumption. So that indicates to me that, there's a lot more people out on the road. Some of the tourists who've come to Rainforest Station and experienced Pumagiri, our experience we have there, they've, indicated that they've actually drove up instead of flying. So getting that market intelligence, if you will, actually helps you out in terms of, strategizing, price sensitivity around that, the price and the retail rate, but also it gives us an outline of that, this is domestic travel. So how do we cater for them in terms of our product experience? Because essentially, compared to the Chinese traveller, they've only got 2 days and 1 night here in Cairns. But with the domestic travellers, they've actually come up here and staying, longer. So we're looking at our experiences and saying, how can we flesh out a half an hour experience into a full hour experience? With our price setting, do we look at, targeting the kids and letting the parents come FOC free of charge? So they're the things that, we've had to be strategic and, I guess you're looking at different ways to entice that, domestic market and local travellers and the self-drives as well to Rainforest Station.
That's interesting too, Willie, this notion of a whole family package rather than just a 1 or 2 group tourism, but actually saying how do you get a whole group to come? And that's interesting, the kind of the parents come free. It's a very interesting kind of thing, because they'll do things for their kids that they won't do for themselves sometimes. They'll make that an experience. Gudjugudju, you're there innovating all the time around just information and making sure information is shared, and this online presence is very interesting. Do you find that tourists are more likely to organise their experience way in advance, or are they coming in off the street and just not knowing what they're doing at the time?
Yeah, well, a bit of both. I think quite a few people are coming in off the streets and having a talk, and I think being the only Indigenous tour desk, especially in Cairns, people want to sit down and have a yarn, because we make it a lot more comfortable for people to just sit down and have a talk about what they actually want to do, because quite a few people want to have an experience and they're just not too sure what type of experience they like to have. Then when you tell them about the many of experiences that are just around here, because we're also going to do a take an elder for a walk. They could just ring up an elder that we'd have on our website as well, and just ring up. They pay for it before it starts, and then they meet the elder. Like maybe just go for a cup of coffee and sit down. Like at one of the cafes in town, and the elder takes them for a walk, just a leisurely walk around Cairns, and just tell them about the history and the stories. Because there's a lot of histories and stories around in the area.
That Airbnb was looking at that very, very same thing, the idea of experiences. Cameron, I've seen you nodding this whole time, going, yeah, this is something about how do you get tourists off the beaten track, and do they plan for a First Nations experience, or do they just stumble across it?
At the moment, and I think this is coming back to us collectively and the opportunity that we're present. So you've got Willie Enoch Tranby with Rainforestation, who in March this year won the bronze for the Australian Indigenous Tourism Award, the Australian Tourism Awards in the Indigenous category. And the reason I say that is because the quality of product we've got out there is there, and where it's a bit, and I'll refer to CIAF and to the Backing Indigenous Arts program as that I had the pleasure and honour to work on, and that is the model for tourism as far as I can see. And that is, we had a Backing Indigenous Arts program, which I think Artie Rosie might have done the actual artwork for the cover of Backing Indigenous Arts back in the day. It was a three, yep. It was a beautiful piece of artwork. It used to hang in my office. It was wonderful. And so that what took there was a 3 to 4 year investment in backing Indigenous arts, funding art centres, funding the Cairns Indigenous Art Fair. And for the First Nations plan that I just showed you before, what we need now is government to back that for 4 years in the COVID recovery for us to drive forward all those pillars. And we have got the quality of product there. I need to acknowledge the Palaszczuk government and the Tourism Minister, Kate Jones, who unfortunately couldn't be here, but they are backing us. That's like they backed Indigenous arts. They are backing us for Indigenous tourism. They responded when we said we want the Year of Indigenous Tourism, and there was $10 million for the Year of the Outback. They responded and put in $10 million for this Year of Indigenous Tourism. So for me, I think we want to strategically come together, First Nations people. We need to lead and show the government the way forward. And so we've got all these great little pieces, and where Gudjugudju said that Cairns Indigenous Tourism Hub, that is exactly what we need to start doing collectively, and then start in our regions, and then join. So in the Year of Indigenous Tourism, we want to say, have a look at these connected packages and linked so that we're actually coordinating amongst ourselves how we want our tourism to be marketed and sold and connected. So someone flying into Brisbane or Cairns, they have a regional experience, and then we send them to the Outback. So it's up to us now to start doing that. And what we want to do is ask the government to back us to do it.
I mean, we were talking before about the authenticity, the sense of trust there, Cameron, as well. I mean, I might go to Artie Rosie here about, obviously, they trust you, they come to you, they know they're getting an authentic experience, it's yours there. But sometimes that's not always the case. I mean, there are sometimes tourist opportunities which, there might be a black fella out the front, but there's all the white fellas behind telling them what to do. I mean, have you had experiences like that, Rosie, where you don't feel in charge of what you do?
Well, I am the package. I do everything from the drawing board to the printing to the retail to the selling. I'm also a host to Airbnbs here, and one next door neighbour, and out at St. Paul's on Moe Island, where I come from. So what
you see is what you get.
Can you see? Oh, sorry.
I was just saying, what you see is what you get with you. It's very clear. Yeah,
that's it. And I like the idea of a trail that starts like from Brisbane there, come all the way to Cairns, come up the Cape to Banagasacia, come across the water, across the sea to here, Thursday Island, and those outer islands who wants to grasp tourism, make it available for them too, so that the visitors, they got that safety net from Brisbane, the whole of Queensland, coming up the east coast, and out west to Mount Isa, like link up that way too. So, I think that we should use this COVID-19 now to plan, be together, stay together, plan it for next year, 2021.
Gudjugudju, you've talked about this too, about black cladding, this notion of,
Yeah.
do you want to explain a little bit about black cladding at all?
Yeah, look, a lot of the industries are out there, especially with this year being the year of the Indigenous people. I think a lot of business owners that aren't Indigenous have been putting in for the funding, but they want a black face, to actually be at the front. But the funds go back not to the communities, and there's no community benefits out of it. And and that's what we're trying to help with. A lot of the Indigenous business that are out there that are privately run, privately owned, by Indigenous operators, like Jaramali, like he does his own thing there, and it goes back to his community, and his networks. I know Elverina Johnson, you probably know her with all her art and stuff, but she's also wanting to do her own tours. But I think, the industry's got to change by allowing, cultural knowledge that's being utilized belongs to the people who are part of that country, and they need to talk about it. But we get a lot of businesses that are doing the black cladding. They're owned by non-Indigenous people. They make money out of the industry. It kind of started like previously with the didgeridoos. When we had a lot of non-Indigenous people making didgeridoos, and tourists that come over here think, wow, because they put a Gam and Murray name on it and stuff like that, and sell it and say, yeah, this fella just lived up the road and stuff like that, and they've been having backpackers painted.
Yeah.
We don't want the tourism industry to fall in the same trap. We need all the Indigenous businesses that are out there running their own, doing their own things in their businesses and wanting to do it on country to be able to benefit from it, because, throughout the industry, they're the only ones who actually employ their own people to work in the businesses. And I always say that if you go to Fiji or even you're over to New Zealand, they're running their businesses. You go to Fiji, they'll say, Ulu to you and everything else like that when you go there. Hawaii, if you go to Hawaii, you don't want a non-Indigenous person putting a lei around your neck and, saying hello. I think we need to change the face that way here, where when you talk about the black cladding side of it, the money doesn't go back to the communities that would benefit from it, and the young guys are coming up. They need to have those role models there in the industry as well.
Agreed. I mean, Pamela.
And say, wow, I can do this.
Pamela Bigelow in the Facebook chat, she's talking about it's got to come from us. It's got to come. It's our mob. Cameron, I'm going to ask you about this. I mean, you're involved in a whole range of activity that is about authenticity, about ownership, but also about economic and social return that the tourism is happening in. I mean, how important is that for you? Oh, you're on mute there, Cameron.
Sorry about that. It's extremely critical. Particularly if you look at the Quantum Mercury example, we've gone post mining into, tourism and other sectors are basically where our economic base is going to come from. So whether it is accommodation or it's tours or, people visiting our national parks, it's an economic base that we've been able to shape and mould to actually get other outcomes. So cultural outcomes, caring for country, social outcomes, jobs and employment means, healthier people, less crime rates, all that sort of stuff. Tourism has been, it is going to be one of the major catalysts and drivers for a glad tomorrow for our children's children. So we're getting our tourism framework. We've got a tourism strategy, an action plan in place on country that helps direct and guide us, and it captures all that critical stuff about making sure that we're putting country before coin. But in doing that, it is about clearly getting an economic base for our people. And I think from our perspective, we're a bit different as a native title body. We're partnering with industry and government to create an ecosystem that allows our businesses, our small businesses, to thrive as well. So we've got to create that for the individual artists as well. We're creating that ecosystem. I take on board Gudjugudju's point around, black cladding, and it's a really fine line of going, how do you get those authentic partnerships in place? We've had partnerships with Indigenous Business Australia and looking at other sort of partners where they're non-Indigenous businesses, but how do you maintain that control, authenticity and integrity? I think, with Willie, with rainforestation is they're looking at, they've been successful in that model. And so it is about how we get industry and government to understand those really critical points about authenticity, ownership by the traditional owners and by, the First Nations people. But without a doubt, globally, I see us like from getting a Cairns Indigenous tourism hub in that network to a regional one, Far North Queensland, to across the state, across the country, and then having been to the World Indigenous Tourism Forum, it's about how do we get the around the world Indigenous tourism experience, that bucket list where you're with Indigenous tourism operators around the globe, from Eskimos down to Maori to First Nations people of Australia. There's that opportunity for us, starting in our backyards and then feeding out.
I love that quote of Artie Rosie, the glad tomorrow, the children's children, the glad tomorrow, this beautiful sense of how we are doing things to make sure the next generation will benefit. Willie, I mean, in many ways, you are the next generation. This notion of the younger people with more hair than Cameron coming on and kind of doing things to make the difference. What is it that you need as someone working in this tourism area? What do you need now to make sure that you're successful in the next 10 years?
Well, just basically going back when I first started sales and marketing, I think around 2013, 2012. So basically, when I started the sales and marketing role, there was no Indigenous sales and marketing, executive, up here. And considering that, Hubway, has been running for over 2 decades, and also with us, it's quite, I guess, daunting to have not one of us, our mob, stand in front of me. But on the other hand, I actually, realized this, and I grew to that challenge. And, part of that challenge was to actually understand the tourism industry itself. But also, on my journey now is understanding how the Indigenous sector fits in with all the other, I guess, sectors in Indigenous and the tourism industry. Because, with us as well, like Cameron said, in terms of the product and the experience, we do have to be globally competitive, but also be in authenticity as well.
So more training? Are you thinking that more people need training to take on these experiences?
Yeah, so one, I guess one of the things, part of the Year Indigenous Tourism for this year, the government and also the Minister, Kate Jones, they recognised, because I was part of the first, I was the first Indigenous person for the Young Tourism Leaders Program. So part of that program is connecting with people who are high up in the industry, with board members, business owners, people like that. So this year they created the first Indigenous Young Tourism Leaders Program. And so I was, I guess I was nominated to be the mentor of that cohort. So we're I guess as Indigenous tourism and as Indigenous people, we've actually, getting along the way, we're getting along a little wins along the way. So if we keep in that direction, and again, with the support of QTech, Minister Kate Jones, and, Cameron, in his role he does with QTech as well. So we're getting the right people in the right areas. And, like Cameron was saying, this is our time for Indigenous tourism, to pivot out of this, but also, we can lead the tourism industry out of this.
Absolutely. And I think that, Artie Rosie, I'm going to ask you this notion of, it sounds like the more we work together, the more we're networked together, the more we can support each other, train each other up. That's going to be very important. Listening to the idea too of more structures that help us to share experiences, that's going to be very important as well. But Artie Rosie, what is it that you need for the next 10 years of your practice, your work in the tourism industry? What do you need to get that support?
Oh, well, I'd love to see more Torres Strait Islanders, more private enterprise here, because how I've been drive my business, if I can do it, they can do it. I'd rather our own people, grassroots people, drive it than government. And I like to link up with all of us on the coast, rest of the Queensland, to link up, because that way we stay together, we can support one another, we know what one another's doing, we bounce off each other, and that makes us better in ourselves to be more innovative, new ideas, how to change things, it's not working this way, we go this way, do it this way, because the visitors will not stop. This tourism now is open to the world. Here in the Torres Strait, we have cruise ships that come in here. And last year, I think we had about 11 booked. So the world comes to us here on Thursday Harbour.
Well, this is the challenge, isn't it? And sorry, Artie Rosie, we're having a little bit of issue with your audio there, but I'm sure that'll work itself out. And Willie, Pamela Tyler says hello. So from Trinity, old Trinity Links, apparently. So I know
that's one of my agents.
Agents. Oh, well, that's good to know. But that idea of networking and connections is very important. Artie Rosie, you raised this issue about, last year there were 11 cruise ships that came into Torres Strait, anticipating that, in fact, into the future, the cruise ship industry might be a little bit flat, if it all existed in that way. There are some challenges coming with COVID-19. I just want to take 5 minutes just to talk to each of you about what you see some of the challenges of COVID-19 being. Artie Rosie, what are you doing?
Well, I've taken the opportunity to have a rest, which is much needed, because I've been just working the seasons every year and I'm not getting any younger. And I've just used this COVID as to have rest, clean up my studio, refocus where I'm going, and coming out of it, I want to do still produce my work, but go into another direction.
Well, I think the key to your practice has always been integration as well, not just the artwork, but also the tourism experiences, the narratives, the homestays, all of that. Gudjugudju, what are you doing in terms of COVID-19 to cope with the situation and also to project into maybe 12, 18 months from now, the tourism industry?
Yeah, well, we had to look at how we were going to reinvigorate our marketing more so, and around try to actually get more of the unknown tourism businesses that are starting up. There's quite a few of them. I think everybody was gearing up for the Year of Indigenous Peoples, and because we at the start of the year we had a lot of young people coming in and wanting to promote their businesses, not just from the local groups around here and over at Yarrabah, but also the ones up going up towards Lockhart as well. So there's a lot of the communities actually wanted to get into the tourism industry to promote their culture and the cultural experience in each individual communities. But so what had happened was when COVID struck, we kind of had to shut down. For us, because we started in January, we couldn't access any of the COVID funds that a lot of businesses, had access to. And I've got to give a shout out to the guys who we rent our office space out of, because they were pretty good, in regards to reducing rent and stuff like that, just to keep us operating. But I think the next stage for us is actually planning for next year, but getting all those different tourism packages, Indigenous tourism packages, ready. because I think next year may be, the year actually for Indigenous tourism, because I think it allows us to look at what we were trying to do this year to actually make it a lot better and bringing it to fruition next year.
Yeah, it's also sounding that with Artie Rosie and yourself that actually smaller operators might be a little bit more nimble. They could change and shape as long as there's more collaboration, the idea of your hub, the idea of talking to each other. But smaller operators, people out there now, the smaller operator might be able to survive by keeping the communication to people going. Willie, this notion of the COVID-19, you've talked about it already. I was quite fascinated by the idea of the drive tourist, the person who jumps in their car, or people who jump in their car and drive to experience a different tourism environment in coming to Cairns. Are there any other kind of observations you have around COVID-19 that you've got?
Yeah, as we spoke about before, it's when it actually first started, we closed down and took a few weeks off to recuperate and I guess recover. But in terms of our, I guess like everyone else, in terms of our a business model, strategies that we had to not only check in with the other dance troupe and see how we're going, individually and what are our circumstances and whatnot. So, but based from a business point of view, we had to quickly identify, which markets are still, I guess, engaging into our destination as a whole. And then we actually had to, again, look at those different markets in terms of, consumer behavior. And like I touched on before, price points, was a big one, but also more, being strategic and innovating around our marketing as well. So, because with the, for me, with the domestic market, like I, touched on before, we're looking at ways to flesh out our half an hour experience to an hour and a half, potentially 2 hours. But also looked at how we can make it interactive, for the kids and that as well to enjoy it. Because for me, if the kids can enjoy it, the parents will come.
Absolutely. Cameron, I know there's been lots of things there. You talked about the mining being replaced by a lot more tourism and the economic development, but during COVID-19, that might be a little bit held back.
We've been really lucky in terms of we're in Southeast Queensland. Southeast Queenslanders couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't go across the borders. So we've actually had a bookings bonanza for us. And so we're very fortunate that we've had that opportunity. The shutdown period was an opportunity for us to reimagine what a campground actually is. And so we're looking at it as more as an education space, a conservation space that people can come and camp. Obviously, generational family connections, and then also how we can educate people to go away as cultural ambassadors for us as well. Innovation is critical for us. We're now looking at that next step of pivoting and looking at innovation in our tours and products, virtual reality, etc. I want to pay a massive shout out to Cairns Indigenous Art Fair for leading the way in terms of innovation by going digital this year, and they are continuing to lead us forward. I wanted to say that our festival has been postponed and this year, but we're keen to connect with the art fair and Laura and look at during the year of Indigenous tourism how our festivals can coordinate together to showcase, Zenith, Winds of Zenith, all that sort of stuff, how we can showcase the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander festivals. And I just want to touch on what Artie Rosie was saying there about small businesses. It's very clear, and I'd shout out to Mark Olson from Tropical Tourism North Queensland, who is advocating strongly for Indigenous tourism. And it is two types of small businesses. There's the existing small businesses that need that funding there to help them step up to the next thing, next mark, but also those new and emerging small businesses as well. So we really need, in the year of Indigenous tourism, the tourism minister and the small business minister to come together and provide support for those Torres Strait Islander and other far North Queensland small businesses to help them move along. So we're very fortunate. We're actually doing better than last year in terms of Southeast Queensland and on Minjerribah Bar. The question for us during COVID is we've seen what it's like without tourists. So how do we balance it and get things in place for capacity for the island for us? So it's a really weird year, but it's also throwing up a lot of surprises in positives for us.
It just we're coming to the last couple of minutes of this session, and I just want to ask each of you just one word that kind of sums up your view of the future. You know, one word that says, you know, gives you an idea of what the future might. So I'm going to come to each of you. So Artie Rosie, just thinking about what's one word that sums up the future for you in tourism, especially First Nations tourism.
Success.
Yep, you're the package, and what I've loved seeing and doing some research about you, Artie Rosie, is you are absolutely the package. If anyone's going to Thursday Island, catch up with Artie Rosie. She will show you around and give you a good time and sell you some art in the process. Gudjugudju, what's your one word summing up the idea of First Nations tourism? Oh, you're just on mute there, Gudjugudju. So I didn't even hear that word then.
Muted.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, I'd say invigoration, because I think the industry is going to be more invigorated after this year. I think with a lot more influx of new Indigenous tourism.
And I think the work that you've been doing, Gudjugudju, and your group about bringing the hub together, people getting new information, getting new ways of connecting with each other, is a lesson for us all. And I think invigoration is a really great thing. Willie, what's your word for the future?
I think unity. I think in terms of Indigenous tourism, and just through this conversation, there is that that word for me that underpins everything is unity. And I guess at times like this, you know, especially with COVID-19, and as a collective and working on a committee with Cameron through this journey, we've actually, you know, there is a need for us to come together, you know, for the benefit of the industry, and again, you know, for the betterment, you know, of our culture as well. So again,
yeah, that's good. I think unity is a really strong word. This notion of you saying, as we've all talked together, there's been lots of nodding of heads around the panel about, yep, how do we do that? And I've been really impressed also with your sense of innovation and analysing data, really, which is great. Cameron, your one word.
Yeah, sustainability. So.
And I think, yeah, sustainability both economically as well as environmentally.
Culturally, environmentally, I think that's, you know, that's for us is what we should strive for. Yeah.
Well, there's 4 words to kind of give us a sense of the way forward. I've been work that you're doing, QTIC, this idea of providing a structure under which more First Nations tourism can exist and go. The showcasing of arts and culture, the networking that we do together to share ideas, that as Artie Rosie shows us, collaboration is the key. And also this idea of innovation that Willie was talking about. The sharing of knowledge and working locally seem to be a very... Adding experiences to the tourists' visits to your area so they can actually support the local community more and more. A big thank you to our panellists for your amazing insight. We've come to the end of our hour, but I'd say a big thank you to CIAF. It's an 11th year and a real sense of celebration, and as if you like, a demonstration that arts and culture can futures, as well as sustaining us as human beings along the way. So big thanks to everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Again, you can come in on Wednesday, and we're talking a little bit about Cook and Cook 2020, and we can go from there. All right, thanks again. We'll see you soon.
thank you.
Is it? You.
And I think we've
Thanks
ended.
for that.
Excellent.